The first sign something was wrong wasn't the water, it was the silence from the HOA when he asked for help. For years, Mark had lived peacefully in the neighborhood. His home sat slightly downhill from the HOA president's luxury property, a modern house with stone walls, expensive landscaping, and a reputation for perfection. The HOA loved rules. Grass height, paint color, mailbox shape, everything was controlled. Mark followed every rule without complaint, believing peace was worth more than arguments. Then one spring morning, he stepped outside and noticed a strange smell near his driveway. By afternoon, water began pooling where it never had before. At first, he assumed it was a clogged drain. He called a plumber. The plumber checked, frowned, and said something that made Mark's stomach drop. The neighborhood drainage line above his property wasn't flowing at all. Mark contacted the HOA immediately. He explained calmly, shared photos, and asked for inspection access to the upper property. Days passed. No reply. When he followed up, the HOA secretary responded with a single sentence: "The issue is on your land." But Mark knew that wasn't true. Each day, the water rose higher. His yard became muddy. The smell worsened. Neighbors avoided eye contact. When Mark requested written confirmation from the HOA, they sent a warning instead, accusing him of violating landscaping rules due to poor yard conditions. That was the moment Mark realized this wasn't an accident, and if the drain was truly blocked above him, someone had done it on purpose. He just didn't know yet how expensive that decision would become for the HOA. Mark tried again, this time in person. He walked up to the HOA president's house, standing before the tall stone fence that separated her perfect lawn from the rest of the neighborhood. When he rang the bell, she opened the door with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. Before he could finish explaining, she cut him off. "There is no drainage issue on my property," she said firmly. "And you have no right to inspect anything here." Mark showed her photos. He explained the slope. He even offered to pay for a professional inspection himself. She refused everything. Then her tone changed. She warned him that continued accusations could result in fines or legal action for harassment. Within days, Mark received official HOA notices. Violations. Threats. Deadlines. They claimed his flooded yard was unsightly and demanded immediate correction. The irony was painful. The problem causing the damage was being ignored, while the damage itself was being punished. Mark hired an independent engineer. The report confirmed his fears. The main drainage pipe uphill had been intentionally sealed. Not collapsed. Not clogged by debris. Sealed. When Mark forwarded the report to the HOA, their response was short and cold: "We dispute these findings." That's when Mark stopped asking. He contacted the city, because when water flow is altered illegally, it's no longer an HOA issue. It's a public safety issue. And the city doesn't ignore sealed drainage systems. Mark had no idea that one inspection request would turn the HOA's pride and luxury into their worst nightmare. The city inspector arrived early the next morning. He walked the property line carefully, measuring elevation, reviewing maps, and taking photos. Mark watched quietly as the inspector followed the drainage path uphill, stopping exactly where Mark had suspected. The inspector's expression changed immediately. The drain wasn't just blocked. It had been reinforced with concrete and landscaping stones, deliberately hidden beneath decorative features. The inspector took more photos, then shook his head slowly. "This is a serious violation," he said. Within hours, official notices were issued. The HOA president's luxury home was flagged for illegal modification of shared drainage infrastructure. The inspector ordered immediate exposure of the drain for further assessment. The HOA president exploded. Emails flooded Mark's inbox accusing him of betrayal, exaggeration, and destroying community harmony. The HOA board called emergency meetings. Lawyers were contacted. But the city didn't care about emotions or reputation. Only compliance. When the concrete was removed, inspectors found more issues: improper grading, unauthorized alterations, and water redirection that forced runoff onto lower properties. Each discovery added another violation. Then came the report. The inspector concluded that the drainage blockage directly caused damage to Mark's property and posed a flooding risk to the entire street. The recommended solution wasn't small. It required dismantling part of the luxury landscaping, reopening the drain, and correcting structural grading near the foundation of the HOA president's home. and that's when the real nightmare began. The HOA president's home, once praised as the neighborhood showcase, became a construction zone overnight. Barriers went up. Workers arrived. Beautiful stone features were torn out. Decorative walls were dismantled. What had been hidden for years was now exposed to everyone. Neighbors gathered quietly, watching as perfection crumbled piece by piece. The inspector issued a second report. The blocked drain had caused long-term water pressure against the home's foundation. Cracks were discovered. Moisture damage spread beneath finished floors. Mold risk was identified. The city deemed sections of the home temporarily uninhabitable until repairs were completed. Insurance refused coverage. The alterations had been unapproved. The responsibility fell entirely on the homeowner and, by extension, the HOA that had enforced silence instead of solutions. The HOA board panicked. Emergency assessments were announced. Legal fees skyrocketed. Special fees were proposed. Neighbors turned on leadership, demanding answers. Meanwhile, Mark's property finally began to dry. As the drain reopened, water flowed naturally for the first time in months. His yard recovered. The smell disappeared. The violation notices against him were quietly withdrawn without apology. But the story wasn't over, because the inspector's report didn't just stop at repairs, it triggered a full review of the HOA's authority. Past decisions and enforcement patterns, and what they found changed everything. City officials requested HOA records, permits, approvals, modification logs, correspondence. What began as a drainage dispute became a full compliance audit. Investigators noticed patterns: projects approved without permits, selective enforcement, and repeated pressure on homeowners who questioned authority. Mark wasn't the first. Several residents came forward quietly, sharing stories of denied access, ignored safety concerns, and intimidation through fines. The HOA president's name appeared on nearly every questionable decision. The inspector filed an expanded report. The city ruled that the HOA had exceeded its authority and failed to act in good faith regarding shared infrastructure. As a result, enforcement powers were suspended pending legal review. The luxury home remained under repair. Costs climbed daily. Contractors uncovered more damage linked to redirected water flow. What was once cosmetic became structural. The HOA president attempted to settle quietly, offering Mark compensation if he would withdraw complaints. He declined. The truth was already documented. The city scheduled a compliance hearing. Notices were mailed to every homeowner. Attendance was mandatory, and when the hearing date arrived, the HOA's image of control finally collapsed under the weight of its own decisions. The hearing room was full. City officials presented evidence calmly and methodically. Photos, reports, timelines. Every ignored email. Every denied request. Every unauthorized alteration. The HOA had no defense that matched the documentation. The ruling was decisive. The HOA was found responsible for the illegal drainage blockage and subsequent damage. Fines were issued. Oversight was imposed. Leadership was removed pending restructuring. The luxury home repairs were mandated, not optional. Mark was awarded compensation for property damage and legal costs, but the biggest change wasn't financial, it was freedom. HOA authority was limited. Future infrastructure changes required city approval. Transparency rules were enforced. Residents finally had a voice without fear of retaliation. The neighborhood felt different afterward. Quieter. Lighter. People waved again. Conversations returned. Control gave way to cooperation, and the drain, it flowed freely, exactly as it was always meant to. Months later, Mark stood in his restored yard, watching water move naturally through the open system. The problem that nearly drowned his home had exposed something far bigger than a blocked pipe. It revealed what happens when power ignores responsibility. The HOA president's luxury home was repaired, but its reputation never recovered. The neighborhood no longer feared silence. They learned that rules without accountability eventually destroy themselves. Mark never wanted a fight, he only wanted the truth to flow, and once it did, everything changed, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.